So we look then at, we're going to look tonight at two ways of coming back into balance with duck meditation. And one of them is, how do you sit down on the waves when they're happening? Rather than react to the waves, how do you just be here? And the other is, how do we remember we're part of the Atlantic? Because there is a remembering that's possible on this path that can change everything. There's an understanding that widens our view in our body, and our sense of energy and beingness opens up. Okay, so part one. Mindfulness is our training in sitting down in the waves. And the elements, just to remind yourself of the elements of mindfulness. One element is that it's purposeful, that we start sensing the triggers and then we get on purpose in those moments. On purpose, I'm going to pay attention. And that's something, this is part of the rewiring of the brain that's completely doable. Just the way we're wired to kind of forget and contract and get lost, we can train ourselves to remember. So there's a purposefulness, and then the first element that we really, when we think of what is mindfulness, there is a recognition of what's happening in the moment. And as training in equanimity, you might begin to do that by mentally whispering what you're noticing. Fear, anxiety, jealousy, obsessing. Okay? Just mental whisper. So rather than being lost in what's happening, there's a part of you that's witnessing or beholding or recognizing that's bigger than the reaction. Okay, so on purpose, and then naming what's going on. And then the other, we call these kind of the wings, like you're recognizing what's happening. The other is to purposefully allow it. Now, my language for that is saying yes. That in some way we're agreeing. And it's not like we're saying, I love this. I want this to keep happening. It's like we're saying, this is reality. This is the wave of this moment. So we're acknowledging in an honest way the reality of the moment. Yes. Name it and say yes. Now, for there to be a full-blown equanimity, that yes needs to be embodied, where you're not only allowing the wave to be there, but you're opening to the felt sense of it. That takes practice. We can often do a precursory kind of yes, like, okay, yes to this anxiety, but it's not like we sit down into it. Do you know what I mean? Where we really feel it in our bodies? So these are the basic elements, and the challenge, and that we encounter this over and over again when we're practicing, whether it's in a sitting practice or when we're out, in the field, is that there's what's called in Pali, the language of the Buddha, Papañca. And Papañca means proliferation. That before we know it, it's not just anxiety, but it has just tumbled into a whole constellation of changing thoughts and feelings. So we're not just dealing with a simple, oh, I think I feel the squeeze of anxiety. It's much more fast-moving and changing and tumbling than that. So, for example, you are trying to get to a doctor's appointment and there's traffic, right? So it's not just a feeling of anxiety and you name it and you're open to it. What happens is, well, you start thinking about being late, and then you get angry at yourself for having not made enough time, so you're feeling that kind of anger squeeze. And then you have the thought that maybe they'll put the person that's next in the schedule in front of you, and then you'll be later, and then you'll be late for the carpool. And oh my God, I've been the only parent that's late for the carpool. And then there's shame and a feeling of, not good enough. And so you're cycling through thoughts and feelings and landing up with a very identified egoic state of a self that doesn't have enough time, is oppressed and failing. Is that kind of thing familiar to anyone? I mean, that's what happens. So how do we do duck meditation when we're on the way to the doctor and late? Or in any situation you might be thinking about, how do we at some point let the naming become clear enough, become purposeful enough, become committed enough that we really say yes and let the body be an anchor. If you can stay long enough in the body, some freedom starts to happen. Now here's why. Papañca, or proliferation, is driven by thought. No thought, no papañca. Emotions on their own, supposedly 1.5 minutes that they arise and pass. But it's the thoughts. Oh, that other patient might go before. Oh, I'm going to be late for the carpool. Oh, other parents, what are they? It's that keeps triggering the biochemistry of mood that then trips off more feelings, so we get caught. If you can become purposeful and say, oh, this is what's happening, you get a little space from the thinking, and if you can be purposeful and say yes and come in your body, if that sustains some space starts opening up. There's a little more freedom. Now, just to say that it's often the reason it's difficult to stay in the waves is because they're very unpleasant. Most of us have well-trained ways of exiting when we feel that restlessness or edginess or the angst. And so what keeps us there, what convinces us to say, okay, I'm going to stay anyway, is there something in each one of you that has a kind of wisdom that knows that it's only by staying, learning to stay, that there's going to be any freedom. So there's some intuition that convinces us, and then we gain more and more what the psychologists call affect tolerance, and what you might consider just more space for what's happening. But the greatest support in staying, and this is perhaps the technique that I think is the most important to remember, is when the waves are difficult, add in a gesture of kindness. If you want to come back to equanimity, the reason you're leaving the waves is because of aversion. There's a hardening, there's a tensing against. A gesture of kindness, which could be just, ooh, this is hard. Or as I often do, it's okay, sweetheart. Just some message inward that reminds me in some way that there's love, there's goodness, there's kindness, helps to soften and decondition that patterning of leaving the waves, flapping away, okay? So in time, and here's the magic of it, like any practice, you will get more and more the knack of noticing, oh, papañca's happening, on purpose, name what's happening, say yes, stay, 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 and find a space that is incredibly precious. The space that you find is really, as I mentioned, it's that heart that's ready for anything. And it's, well, maybe I'll read you this. This is what one woman wrote from doing this training and this practice for a number of years, and then how it served her when she had very little time left to live. Because isn't that it? How do we find equanimity when we're facing the greatest losses? Like even when we're anxious about being late, we're really anxious about loss. That we're going to lose something. We're going to lose esteem. We're going to lose a sense of being okay. We're going to lose time, lose life. Okay, this is what she writes. My days are short, and as I grow weaker, I experience so much gratitude for my meditation. Not only the joy and ease it brought, but the hard parts. For every bored and restless sitting, and every fearful fantasy, and every pain and ache I sat through, and every itch I didn't scratch, was a training for kindness, a training for the muscle for bearing witness, for the trusting spirit that carries me now as I face my death. So this training to sit down in the waves is the training that really allows us to open to the 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows that actually happen in our lives. So we're not always the egoic self that's trying to control and rushing away or trying to get to the finish line or defending. Let's just take a moment. We'll practice a little bit together of this little taste of duck meditation and then move on. So taking these moments to bring yourself right here, really experiencing the breath and the body in the present moment. You might reflect on a situation that's stressful, one that you'd like to have more equanimity in. And see if you can imagine being there. Just let yourself go to the situation so that you're kind of aware of what triggers you. That might mean bringing to mind a person's face or the room you're in. And if you notice you've come up with a situation that's not just stressful but traumatizing, then take a few full breaths and pick a different one, because it's not going to be useful in a few-minute exploration to dive into trauma. Something that just triggers you, gets you annoyed, triggers kind of an addictive, got to have something a different way, got to consume, got to blame. And just notice when you're in that situation, what are the thoughts going through your mind? What are you believing about yourself or the other person or life? And what are you feeling in your body? What's the energy in your body? If you could just mentally whisper and name it, like on purpose, just name it. And let the whisper be gentle. So you begin to be the awareness that's observing too. What's going on? Just to name it. And see if you can say yes to the waves that are there. And just let go of the thoughts for a while and see if your intention can be to sit down in the waves. And if it helps to put your hand on your heart or offer some kindness as you do that, let this be your experiment. Can you sit down in the waves? Set aside the thoughts, the beliefs, and reconnect with the space of presence. Just breathing, feeling, presence. Sense a bit more of this possibility, this heart that's ready for anything, that there's more space, more access to the intelligence and kindness of your being. When you can slow it all down when you can mentally whisper to yourself what's happening, naming it, saying yes, being with the feelings. Taking a few breaths if you like. And just knowing that when we're caught in the thick, we often don't have time to slow it all down. But we can practice when we do have time with what comes up and start to get the knack of stepping out of thoughts and stepping into our body. So taking a few breaths and coming back, opening your eyes.